All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think we are now live and ready to go. Today's guest here on our Justice in Pieces guest speaker series is the Mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown. Thank you very much, Mayor Brown, for joining us. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit about your background here for those who may not be familiar with what you've been up to in the world of law and politics.
Great. Well, great to be on this live stream today. I currently serve as the mayor of Brampton, which is Canada's 9th largest city, and growing. My background is I'm a lawyer by training. I went to the University of Toronto for my undergrad, studied French at the University of Trois-Rivières, and then I did my law school at the University of Windsor. But despite my training in law, I only practiced law briefly because my passion has been in public service. And I served 2 terms on Barrie City Council, spent 3 terms in the House of Commons as the Member of Parliament for Barrie, serving on the Health Committee, the Justice Committee, and chairing the GTA caucus. I then went on to lead the official opposition in the Ontario legislature, serving as the MPP for Simcoe North. So although I'm only 42, I've been in elected politics for 20 years. Canada is the type of country where if you've got drive and determination, age is not a barrier.
Perfect. And I think Adila has a follow-up question relating to your decision to get involved in politics.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you for taking my question. Why did you get involved in, what was your motivation to get involved in politics?
Well, I always found politics fascinating. You know, when you study law, you're interpreting the laws, but politics and public service is writing the actual laws. And I've had the chance to meet many inspiring public servants over the years. And whether it was Jean Charest, who was someone I volunteered for when I was in high school, I really felt that if you have good intentions, you can make a positive difference and leave a positive legacy in your community in public service. And so that was why I started volunteering and why I got involved. I remember being a volunteer for Jean Charest in the 1995 referendum when he was fighting to keep Canada together. And he'd go rally to rally with that Canadian passport. And it just, I found it inspiring.
Now, you've been involved, like I said, for 20 plus years. What have you found maybe differently with municipal level politics versus provincial politics? And how has those different experiences shaped how you are working as the mayor of Brampton currently?
I enjoy municipal politics the most. I've had the unique experience to serve at all 3 levels of government. One of the reasons I enjoy municipal politics the most is in provincial and federal politics, there's partisan divides. And, you know, I would hear ideas from different parties and I'd like them and I'd want to support them. I don't think you should dismiss an idea because it's a red idea or an orange idea, or have to support an idea if it comes from your own party, even if you disagree with it. And there are these walls of partisanship that I think are not helpful to good governance. And what I love about municipal politics is you take that away. You can support any good idea, and you're not confined to play by party politics. And it's just refreshing. You know, quite often when I was in provincial or federal politics, you know, I would be in positions where I would go against my own party because I felt that ideas from other parties had merit. And that is always a source of acrimony when you disagree with your own party. And so you don't have to deal with that acrimony in municipal politics. You can just do what you feel is best.
Now, with COVID-19 going on, how has running the city of Brampton and the municipal council meetings and some of the other meetings, how have you found making those adjustments in light of what's going on right now?
So COVID-19 has been challenging because it's not just a health pandemic, it's an economic firestorm. And so many people have been challenged by this unexpected pandemic. I don't think anyone saw this coming in 2020. And so we're doing the best we can, helping residents keep their head above water as we try to mitigate the damage of this very difficult year. But I have to say, as much as I've seen the challenge and the difficulty of the pandemic, I've seen some of the very best in people. the generosity, the way people rally together to support the less fortunate. I see the beauty in our city when you see people rise to the occasion, and it's those acts of kindness, those acts of generosity that make you proud to serve.
And how have things been done, I guess, differently from your position about, I mean, I know for you personally, obviously you got to balance, Theodore, for example, right, with all your responsibilities. How have you found adapting to this situation personally?
Well, I'd say everything is different. Like right now, most of our meetings are virtual. My police board, my regional council, my city council, these meetings are virtual. And so I can do a lot of meetings from home. And so it is nice being able to have my son crawl up to me and come on my lap as I'm doing a virtual meeting. And so there are silver linings in this pandemic, and spending more time with family is certainly one of them.
And are you seeing a lot more community engagement as a result? I think I'm a resident of Brampton, and I saw that last week there were so many people on some of the council calls that you probably wouldn't see in person at the City Hall there, right? Are you finding a lot more engagement because of the virtual thing? Is that something to take away from in the future?
Well, I think the Teletown Hall, the Teletown Halls have had huge participation. 10,000 people to 15,000 individuals. And so I with everyone home, I think there's a greater interest in the decisions that are being made. People are certainly worried that we have to handle this pandemic very carefully. And so there is a high level of community engagement, which is great.
Now, last week we moved into phase 2, and actually my wife told me I make sure to ask this question because last year we would spend it at Chincocuzi Park with our young one, or Professor's Lake in particular. Mm-hmm. So what's being open and what's still closed, and how are all those things kind of progressing over the duration of the summer, or what are the plans for the city of Brampton?
So the biggest changes with stage 2 is that patios can open. So if you have a favorite restaurant, they can open a patio, and the city's waived all the normal rules around patio expansions to allow restaurants to build pretty awesome patios. The public health believes there's a lower risk of transmission outdoors. Outdoor fields are now open. Parks are open. So these are all positive changes that we're seeing this reopening. But in terms of organized team sports, indoor recreation, that doesn't open yet until stage 3. So if you want to play competitive basketball, we're not there yet because there's a higher risk of transmission. But individual sports, tennis, running, figure skating, those are all allowed right now.
Now, earlier this morning, you announced that in Brampton, they're going to have mandatory masks being worn for indoor spaces. Do you have at least, I think the bylaw is sort of coming out in a couple of days, but what kind of, maybe you can tell us about what's going to be entailed on that? What about people who may not have access to masks? Will they be provided at those spaces, or have you kind of thought about those things just at this stage yet?
So yes, we're going to be requiring mandatory masks. I'm hoping that council will ratify that recommendation of our public medical officer of health this Thursday. And we are looking at a campaign where we provide some promotional masks to the city, but I think it's premature to announce the details on that. We're probably going to have a grace period of about a week to bring this bylaw in, similar to the city of Toronto. But what I would note is there's going to be some reasonableness to this. If you have a respiratory issue, we're not going to be laying a charge. You have to understand there's some people for medical reasons that they can't wear a mask. And we will understand those unique circumstances, but overall, we expect the public to follow this bylaw.
And as well, in particular for us here in the legal profession, I know the A. Granville and William Davis Courthouse. I think you had a little tour of some of the measures that are going to be placed. Could you maybe describe? I think the plan was July 6th. I don't know if they're still planning to make it open at that point, but what are some of the social distancing measures that are going to be put in place, in particular to indoor spaces like the courthouse and perhaps City Hall, where there's going to have a large foot traffic? Is there anything?
Well, in terms of the courthouse, there'll be a lot less people. They're using plexiglass, and a lot of the proceedings in our judicial system, it sounds like they're going to revert to virtual. So whether it's remands, crown resolutions, bail court, it sounds like a lot of that's going to be done virtually.
Now, another student just on the stream was asking about, you mentioned some medical exceptions there from the previous questions. What do you know, maybe what kinds of things would qualify, or is it still pretty too early to tell of?
Well, generally people that have respiratory problems, where for a medical reason it's not advised that they wear a mask. And also the public officer health has said for children, young children aren't supposed to wear a mask. And so whether it's a young child or someone with respiratory issues, those would be exceptions to the rule.
Okay. What about people who, we see it like particularly in the US, like I don't want to wear a mask, I have rights and all sorts of things along those lines.
No.
What are you going to say to those people?
Stubbornness is not a medical condition that exempts you from a mask.
Perfect. Now, in terms of where we're going to move on, I guess, into the next phase, what if you look at the numbers and you see that they're not sort of dropping off? Are there any sort of contingency plans that you're looking at specifically with the city of Brampton, in case you're seeing a spike maybe after we move into phase 2?
If for some reason we saw a spike, the premier has been clear that moving to stage 2 was premised on the case numbers going down. If for some reason that we saw a spike in case numbers, we could easily go back to stage 1. And so it's why, if we want to see a reopening, we really have to follow the advice of public health. Proper hand hygiene, wear a mask, physical distancing. If we follow all these advices, all these recommendations from the public health officer, we're going to continue to see a reopening of the city. But if we don't, it could be a very slow 2020.
And I believe one of my students, Brian, here has a question to you about this Canada Day coming up. So Brian, please ask your question.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Brown, for coming out and having this question. So tomorrow's Canada Day, and it's a time for celebration, but also for reflection on our past, present, and future endeavors together as a nation. For you, if you had the opportunity, what would be one thing in Canada that you could change for the better? What would that be?
So, Canada, I think, is the greatest country in the world. It is an example for others in terms of multiculturalism, diversity, universal healthcare, universal education. I really believe it's a land where it doesn't matter where you're born, what God you worship, who you love. You can succeed if you have drive and determination. Having said that, we do have our own sins in our history. If you look at our treatment of Indigenous people, if you look at how we treated Japanese Canadians after the Second World War, there are many examples where Canada did not take a principled approach. And I think hindsight is always 2020. But if you say, what could you change in Canada's history? Those are examples. The treatment of First Nations is not something that I think Canada is proud of.
Now related to Canada Day, I know normally this would be a big plan for tomorrow. What do you have planned, or what does the city have planned in light of COVID-19 of how to celebrate Canada Day? I mean, and what advice maybe for the residents to maintain sort of appropriate social distancing, but still being able to celebrate our great nation, the greatest nation in the world tomorrow?
So we have a few celebrations happening in the city tomorrow, all safe and approved by public health, of course. We've got virtual fireworks. We've got a virtual celebration with a band walk off the earth. We're also going to be having small musical celebrations around the city. We're using, during the Christmas season, we have a Santa Claus parade. And that truck, which the city owns, that we use for the Santa Claus float, we're now using to take a musical band to different parts of the city. So we're going to be having 5 different musical celebrations, drive through different neighborhoods in the city tomorrow, and giving out Canada Day desserts from different local restaurants. So where there's a will, there's a way, and we're going to find a way to celebrate the greatest country in the world. And all the ward councillors are coming out to this. I know in Ward 2 and 6, Councillor Michael Pileshi actually told me that he's hoping to join the musical celebration in his ward and sing himself. So you never know. There may be some surprises in the different parts of the city.
You just mentioned about some of the things to give pause for now. In Peel Region, I know recently there's been, especially within the school boards, and a lot of the students were feeling about what measures can we put in place with a lot of the feelings of anti-Black racism in some institutions, not just in Peel certainly, but across Canada. What are some ideas that you may have in how we can address and tackle this important issue?
Well, some politicians in Canada have said, oh, we don't have systemic racism in Canada. It's a problem south of the border. I've said from the outset they are naive. We have systemic racism in Canada. We have our own challenges and we have to confront it. And we've had some really courageous individuals in Brampton who have championed pulling down these barriers. I think of Trustee Kathy McDonald and her inspirational work at the Peel School Board confronting systemic racism that's resulted in a supervisor being put into the school board and a removal of some of the individuals responsible. Here at Brampton City Hall, we actually set up an anti-Black racism unit being headed by Gwen Chapman, who is well regarded in the community. And so we are, we've got a council that universally believes in our hearts that we have to confront systemic barriers. We're the most diverse city in the country. If we can't confront systemic barriers, then who's going to? And so, we take this quite passionately in Brampton.
Now, related to that is the situation with E.S. Chowdhury and tragedies like that happening. What are your thoughts on maybe ways that we can kind of alleviate these situations from happening and in Peel Region and then even generally across Ontario?
When I was in the provincial legislature, I gave a speech about we can't criminalize mental health. At the time, I put forward a platform called the People's Guarantee. And one of the components in that People's Guarantee was to provide funding to police forces across the country to ensure that we had proper mental health supports. I don't think in any nonviolent case, we need the police at a mental health interaction. But the challenge is last year we had 15,000 mental health calls to the Peel Police, and they have 1 or 2 cars that provide mental health services. So the partnership with the CMHA is woefully inadequate. Right now, for every 18 mental health calls, we have mental health supports for 1 of them. And under the Police Act, police officers have to respond. So we need the province, we need to step up and to say that we're no longer going to be sending police officers to nonviolent mental health calls. We're going to send mental health workers. The system is broken right now, and I don't want to see more tragedies. We've had 2 recent tragedies in Peel Region. I don't want to see those tragedies. It's heartbreaking. As mayor, I speak to the families, and I can tell you, it's hard talking to a family, and they tell me their pain. I don't want to get those phone calls.
Now, yesterday in Toronto, I guess they voted not to cut anything from the Toronto Police Service budget, but instead move forward with various reforms. Do you think solutions like shifting funding from the police to mental health resources, is that something, or is it maybe increasing funding to other resources, or what do you think is sort of an approach where some people are saying defund the police, but others are saying maybe invest more resources into non-police mechanisms to respond to some of these calls?
So 94% of the police budget is collective agreements. It's labor costs. So the extra is the mental health support. It's things that we're looking at bringing in like body cameras. And so if you did a 10% cut, given the fact you can't touch collective agreements, you'd be cutting the limited mental health supports you have right now, which is not what you want to do. The solution is not simplistic, and I know there's a lot of taglines that are popular at the moment, but what we need is real, tangible solutions. And if we have 18 mental health calls in a day that require visits, I want to have mental health workers available to respond to all of those calls. And we don't have that right now. So what I'm looking for is to have a conversation with the province of Ontario where we can say, we're going to get the proper support for mental health. And it doesn't need to be through the police budget. If they can tell us that they'll fund CMHA to provide the mental health response, then that achieves the same thing. But what I don't want is the continuation of what's happening right now. We send police officers to nonviolent mental health calls, and it's under the Provincial Police Act that they have to go. It's in the Provincial Act that they have to go. That should be changed. But one of the reasons they're not changing it is they don't have the mental health workers to go to those calls. And so I don't like these shortcuts, and I don't like this. I don't like these weaknesses in the system, but I got to call it out. The challenges of a lack of funding when it comes to mental health, and that needs to be addressed.
Now, one of the students, as a follow-up to one of the last questions, was asking what advice maybe you can have to those Brampton residents in particular, people of color who are feeling alienated with some of the, the decisions, like perhaps in particular with Michael Therio last week. What advice can you offer to residents who are feeling discouraged with how justice seems to be working? In your capacity as mayor, if they were to reach out and say, well, this is what we're not happy with, and what would you say? I know it's not necessarily within your control as the mayor, but what advice maybe you can offer to them?
Change the system. We're a moment of history where change is happening. If you asked me 4 years ago if there was the political will to bring in body cameras, there wasn't. We just voted to bring in body cameras to encourage transparency. And so I think there is activism creates opportunities. It creates momentum for change. And if you're in the city of Brampton, you want to get involved, we have avenues to get involved. I know we have a Mayor's Black Advisory Committee, particularly working with Afro-Caribbean community. We've got diversity and inclusion efforts actively underway in the city. If you want to be involved and engaged and help change your city and your province and your country, get involved. The worst thing is apathy. Apathy helps embed the status quo. Engagement helps change the status quo.
And I believe there's an event tonight, I think, by the police force, right? That like a town
yeah,
hall.
They're having a teletown hall. It's Chief Nishan, who we just hired last year, wants to listen, and I'm glad that we have a chief of police who's keen to listen.
Now you mentioned about being able to send out people to these mental health calls there. Now, where do you see yourself finding the budget for that?
So mental health is funded provincially, and right now they're not putting money into that aspect. They're spending $2 billion a year on mental health, but the notion that it's not being spent on responses on mental health calls and that is being relegated to police is inadequate. And so I would love the province to properly fund the CMHA so that these calls can be handled by mental health workers.
Now, another topic that's come up of late, another tragedy that hopefully we can avoid, the mother there with her 3 young daughters, is with relation to traffic and driving here in Brampton. Now, on one end, some of the students were asking, how come Brampton residents are paying the highest rates there for automobile insurance? And then others are saying, well, what can we do to stop these tragedies from happening? So what would you say in kind of recognizing these two sort of points that are related, and how we can do better to have better drivers on the road and at the same time prevent things like this from happening?
So I can't speak to the insurance piece because that's regulated by the province, and in Ontario they allow geographical discrimination. I'd love for them to change that, but it hasn't been something that they've been willing to do as of yet. Other provinces, they say you're not allowed to charge a supplement based on postal code. I love it if Ontario would do that, but there needs to be more of a political will to make that happen. In terms of combating reckless driving, the Peel Police have been running Project Erase, which is they've got these sporadic speed enforcement teams going out. I know a number of cars have been compounded. People have lost their licenses. So if you speed in our community, eventually you're going to get caught. We're also putting in close to 200 speeding cameras. So we're going to have photo radar in close to 200 community safety zones in the city. And I know some people don't like community safety zones. They don't like photo radar. Well, if you don't speed in a community safety zone, you're not going to get a ticket. But if you do, you're an idiot and you deserve to get a ticket. Now, I've got to go on a radio show in a few minutes. Maybe I got time for one more question.
All right, so maybe Kevin, you had a question there you wanted to ask Mayor Brown.
Yes, hello, Mayor. Thank you for taking my question. So my question is, do you have any tips or advice for students who are interested to get involved into politics?
Well, I'd encourage you to get involved. There's no age barrier on participation. And whatever political party you find interesting, whether it's Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, Green, get involved, have your say, or on municipal level, volunteer. I started volunteering in the political process, and it's what got me hooked on it. And I'd say you'd be very surprised how accessible the system is. And there's not enough people that get involved. And so when volunteers come forward, they're welcomed and appreciated. So have your say, be involved, be engaged. It's your democracy. And if you don't help write it, who's going to?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mayor Brown, for joining us. And I guess before you take off there for your radio show, maybe you have any last sort of parting advice for my paralegal students here about anything, about succeeding during these challenging times and studying remotely.
Well, say it, everyone just drive and determination can get you very far. Don't let whatever barriers come up discourage you. There's always going to be bumps on the road. Certainly 2020 is a pretty big bump on the road, but we always have the way to rally and get beyond it. And we're going to. And so I'm sure graduating right now is intimidating as the job market's changed, the economy's changed, but things will get back to normal. They always do, and they will in a post-COVID-19 world. And in time, there's going to be a vaccine. In time, there's going to be antibodies. I've got great confidence in the human capacity to handle challenges, and we're going to handle this challenge.
Perfect. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All the best. Bye, Mayor Brown.